Tonight, Russian forces invading Ukraine bomb non-military targets.
The grief we felt when discovering our stolen children has opened festival.
And a First Nation in Alberta grapples with probable unmarked graves. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. We have new images to show you from a suburb of Ukraine's capital, Kyiv. Rescue crews use buzzsaws to get through steel doors of apartments on the outskirts of the capital. This video, shot by Ukraine's State Emergency Service, shows the heavy damage sustained in what appears to be a residential neighborhood. There's no information on the number of people injured or killed. Well, we want to show you some more video. This from Ukraine's second largest city. Authorities in Kharkiv say Russians' shelling is intensifying. Have struck the city's police building and a university residence. Kharkiv has come under heavy fire in recent days. The city's mayor says they're partially surrounded by Russian forces. Well, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says that Russian President Vladimir Putin seems to have been caught off guard by the strong reaction his invasion of the Ukraine has provoked.
For countries like Canada and the UK to be forward-leaning on pushing on sanctions, Putin probably expected. For Germany to cancel Nord Stream, to talk about shipping weapons to Ukraine, these are things that I think has definitely taken aback the Russian system, because we are so united in standing up not just for Ukraine, but for the principles of democracy that matter so much.
The Prime Minister wouldn't comment on what additional sanctions Canada is considering placing on Russia. Well, the war is affecting youth sporting events that host northern athletes from across the circumpolar world. Russia has been suspended from participating. The Arctic Winter Games International Committee has suspended athletes from the Yamal region in Russia. These games are held every 2 years, and around 2,000 young athletes from around the world attend. Yamal was set to host the games in 2026, the first time the games were held in the region. Located in northwestern Siberia, the Yamal Peninsula is also home to a handful of indigenous minorities. Well, the Kapowegano First Nation in northern Alberta announced that 169 possible unmarked graves were found at the site of the St. Bernard's Indian Residential School. APTN's Chris Stewart has more on that.
Another residential school has been identified as having potential unmarked graves of children who attended the Gerard Mission and St. Bernard's Indian Residential School, operated from 1872 to 1961. In October, the Institute of Prairie and Indigenous Archaeology from the University of Alberta used ground-penetrating radar and drones on 1 acre of the former residential school. Their results: 129 sites with probable graves, 32 possible locations, and 8 likely locations. 107 of the 169 probable graves were found at the community cemetery. Dr. Keisha Supernaut from the University of Alberta is Métis and led the search.
We do not need ground-penetrating radar results to know that children didn't come home from this school. The knowledge of survivors and the extensive archival records already contain clear information about children dying while in residence here. The use of ground-penetrating radar and related techniques are being used to try to identify where these children are buried, including those who may not be in those records.
Dr. Supernaut says she discovered during her research that she had family who never returned from that residential school.
As someone whose family members are in the records of the children who died at the school, I feel the pain of loss of those who should have been my aunties and uncles. Each of these children was a beloved part of a family, and no one has been held accountable for their deaths.
Chief Sidney Halcrow of the Capuano First Nation told those gathered that this discovery of unmarked graves will need a lot of healing.
The grief we felt when discovering our stolen children has opened fresh wounds. We remember the desolation of our people felt when our children were forcibly removed from their families, communities, to be placed in Indian residential schools. I would like to honor all the elders, survivors, who bravely shared their truth with us. Truths that were not believed or acknowledged for many, many years.
They're at birth.
Treaty 8, First Nations of Alberta Grand Chief Arthur Noski called residential schools genocide.
Imagine sending your child to school one day, only to never see them again. When you inquire, you are refused an explanation as to where your child is or if they are even alive. Imagine your child is missing after being sent to school. No one is looking for them, and no one seems to be bothered to care. How would you cope? What would you do?
Upcoming searches will include a nearby Anglican church, the Indian agents, and the Northwest Mounted Police buildings. Noski says that the graves may not be exhumed and will discuss the possibility of that with leaders and elders. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
The National Indian Residential School Crisis Line is available for survivors and others who might need support right now. That number is 1-866-925-4419. Well, it's a bombshell report which confirms staggering allegations of racism at Indian Oil and Gas. That's a federal agency run by Indigenous Services Canada. Managers reportedly made comments about, quote, being scalped, unquote, and asked if he knew any Indigenous person. One employee said, quote, only the ones I step over in the street, unquote. Latisha Wells used to work at Indian Oil and Gas and first spoke out about the racism that she experienced there in her former workplace last year. She joins me now. Latisha, thanks so much for joining us. The report confirms what you've been saying all along. You know, how do you feel to have that confirmation?
It feels legitimate that I'm not just an ex-disgruntled employee, yet again an Indigenous woman seeking vengeance or trying to bring bad publicity to an office. It's a true claim of toxic authority practicing absolute power over Indigenous people.
Yeah. You know, what was your experience like working for the federal government? If you could just remind us again, and we've heard it before, but many of our audience might not have known.
I had an excellent relationship with the federal government up until I believe I was targeted. I was the target of racism. From that point on, it's been the worst working experience in my life regarding racism. It got so bad that when you have a group of Indigenous women speaking of suicide in an office, just to be heard internally, because nothing was being done with our grievances. You have a problem. You have a huge safety problem. You have a liability problem. And you have accountability issues now for dismissing all of the individuals previously that tried to grieve the toxic authority.
You know, what should happen now that this racism has been laid bare for everybody to see?
I think that it's time that IRC, Indian Resource Council, steps up to make a statement as an advocacy group for Indigenous people to stand behind us. I hope that the 634 nations, status, non-status Inuit, stand behind us. If everybody can put their political rhetoric aside regarding whatever it is you're fighting amongst each other, this is a call for help for Indigenous people that are currently employed with the government as we speak, who are being harmed by systems and have no voice. They're being silenced by the same systems that are harming them. They need help. You need to stand up. Somebody needs to stand up to make a move, because nobody's doing nothing. It's just there. There is no talk about how they're going to fix this, what they're going to do to fix this, and if they're going to leave the same exec team to fix their own problems.
Wow. Well, Latisha, we thank you for joining us, and we will be making sure that this story doesn't just end here today with this interview, that's for sure. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
And some great reporting by APTN's Brett Forrester on that story. He obtained the report through an access to information request. You can read more at aptnnews.ca. Well, we need to take a commercial break. Still ahead, the Mural Festival in Vancouver.
Friends with a lot of the northern jewelry makers, engravers. the wood carvers, and I really admired them and watched them, and I was inspired by them.
The annual Vancouver Mural Festival just wrapped up, and APTN's Tina House catches up with one of the artists who got to light up the city with her cultural teachings.
Deborah Sparrow from the Musqueam Nation says, at first she wasn't sure what she wanted to do when she was younger, but she got inspired by watching other artists.
I was friends with a lot of the northern jewelry makers and gravers, the wood carvers, and I really admired them and watched them, and I was inspired by them.
35 years later, and Deborah Sparrow is one of the most well-known and highly respected artists of her generation. She specializes in weaving, and through that medium, she says she brings forth the voices of her ancestors. In fact, she has been able to teach her daughter and her 2 grandsons to carry on their tradition and culture.
You see these patterns, but what's beautiful about the patterns, other than just how beautiful they are, is that they're recognizable. I like to say we're all blanket makers throughout the world, and if that's one thing that connects us on a positive level, is that we were all doing this, and we've all gone so far away from ourselves that we remove this and think it belongs in a different category, when it is actually the depth of who we are as people, connected and rooted to our land, no matter where we come from.
And for the last 2 weeks, Sparrow's design patterns lit up the Vancouver skyline at BC Place every night, along with Science World. She worked with her 21-year-old grandson, Siler, to complete the project. Their other murals were also featured at Granville Island, the entire side of the Biltmore Hotel, and Cathedral Square, where she had an opportunity to pay tribute to the 215 children whose hidden graves were discovered in Kamloops, BC.
Those 215 first babies that are now stars in the sky are also even shining their light back to say thank you to us for doing the work that we're going to do, for all of the children, the 9,800 and some odd that have been found.
For Deborah, she says her art is her therapy, and her craft is her legacy for future generations.
When people call and say, oh, you're an artist, I'm like, no, I'm merely a woman who is doing what I'd be doing before contact, and that is to bring forward this education of who we are. And it's not just about art. We don't just hang things on our wall. We dance them, we use them. They're our regalia, they're our identity.
Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Beautiful work there. Well, a moratorium on hunting moose on Huron-Wendat ancestral land in Quebec soon may be imposed. The moose population in a wildlife reserve in eastern Quebec is experiencing a sharp decline. Experts say a drop of about 17%. Here's a story by APTN's Shushan Bacon and translated and read by Tom Fenario.
Le feu qui nous réchauffe, qui nous éclaire, qui nous permet de vivre.
Denis Gravel is known as a firekeeper in his community of Wendake. He enjoys sharing his knowledge about Huron-Wendat culture. In fact, it's his job as a guide at this educational Huron site near Quebec City.
Et puis, on repoussait tous les chevreuils vers l'enclos. Et évidemment, ils étaient canalisés vers l'extrémité et ils ne pouvaient plus sortir avec l'avance des chasseurs.
The techniques might have changed, but Huron-Wendat like Gravel still go hunting. Moose is usually Gravel's preferred game, but there's talk of a moratorium to moose hunting in the Pôle Neuf Wildlife Reserve, a territory in which the Huron-Wendat have been present for generations.
On est rendu à ce moment, à cette époque où on doit protéger la ressource pour qu'on puisse permettre à nos enfants, nos petits-enfants de pouvoir en profiter.
According to Jean-Pierre Tremblay, professor in the Department of Biology at Laval University, the science agrees with what hunters like Gravel have noticed. The moose population is in trouble.
Tous les indicateurs vont dans le même sens, la population diminue.
Tremblay says wolves, ticks, and parasites are contributing to the decline. And now hunting needs to be addressed.
C'est sûr que le facteur principal là, est celui sur lequel, le curseur sur lequel on est capable de jouer le plus facilement relativement, c'est la récolte, là, parce que ça, on le contrôle à peu près entièrement.
APTN requested interviews with the Huron-Wendat Nation Band Council and the Quebec Ministry of Wildlife. Both refused, stating that discussions concerning the moose are ongoing. Meanwhile, Denny Gravel continues to tend the fire here. He says he's willing to stop moose hunting for the next season or two, if it allows the community to hunt in the generations to come.
Évidemment, tous ceux qui seront concertés, je crois qu'on en est rendu là. On doit laisser les querelles en arrière. On doit se réunir, créer cette alliance pour qu'on puisse protéger la ressource.
The Ministry of Wildlife and the Huron-Wendat Nation are collaborating on an aerial survey of the moose population in the Pole-Neuf Wildlife Reserve. The results will help determine if a moose hunting moratorium is necessary. A story by Shoshan Bacon, APTN National News, Wendake, Quebec.
One more quick break, but when we come back, a mother who has 5 lawsuits in the works for what she says the child welfare system has done to her and her children, her 4 children. That after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. This was sent to us. It's a selfie taken by Melissa Isaac. She is an educator with the Saginaw Chippewa tribe in Michigan. She wore this ribbon skirt to last night's State of the Union address in Washington, D.C., where she was a guest of the First Lady, Jill Biden. You can keep sending us your photos to share at aptn.ca. Now let's take a quick look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Off to the east coast, we got a mix of sun and cloud, -2 for St. John's, +2 in Charlottetown. Chance of snow, though. Kuujjuaq, -22 in sunny skies. Nain, -18 in sunshine. -15 and snow for Chibougamau. Sept-Îles, -8 and snow expected. -4 and cloud for Ottawa, -6 and snow for Sault Ste. Marie. Kapuskasing, -11 and snow. Sioux Lookout, -12 and sunny skies. Lots of sun in northern Manitoba, -21 for Churchill. Norway House, -16. -16 for Barons River as well. Sunshine, -9 for Brandon. 0 and snow for Swift Current, -14 and sunny for Saskatoon and Yorkton. -15 and sunshine for Meadow Lake. -22 and sunny in Stony Rapids. Snow and -14 for High Level, -3 and snow for Grand Prairie. Snow and -7 for Edmonton and Red Deer. 13 for Lethbridge. 9 and sunshine for Kamloops. 6 and sunny for Quesnel. Sandspit, 5 degrees and cloudy skies, -5 and cloud for Fort Nelson, -3 and sunshine for Whitehorse and Mayo, -10 and sunny for Rock River. Wauhati, -22, sunny skies there. Fort Leard and Trout Lake, both -4 and sunny. Sunny up north too, and WT -17 for Sax Harbor, -15 for Colville Lake. Arviat, -18 and sunny. New Yacht, -19 and sunshine there. And -15 and snow for Pangertung and Clyde River. Well, we have a fun new development here on APTN News. Darryl Stranger will be the host of a new bi-weekly sports segment on your Friday newscasts. It's called Sports with Stranger. Let's find out what he has in store for us. Darryl, this is exciting. Very exciting news.
Yes.
So what is Sports with Stranger? What are you going to be doing?
Yeah, so I mean, Sports with Stranger is what it sounds. I mean, it's sports with me,
you.
Darryl Stranger, right?
Love
so I hope to be doing a lot of things. One-on-one interviews with professional athletes and local athletes, just giving the the one-on-one for the audience that sometimes they don't really get, and sometimes it kind of gets lost in the shuffle with some other interviews. I'm going to be doing. I might try out some sports myself. I'll be.
Can I contribute to the list of the sports I would like to see you try? I've started the list actually. It begins with figure skating.
Well, we might need to bump that one down. But my athletic ability might not be as on par as it was a few years ago. But we'll be trying that out. Historical look at some how some sports got started and the Indigenous angle to that. You look at lacrosse, and you look at hockey,
totally.
right? So that kind of thing. And then I'm also going to be looking for you, the audience, to send us highlights of anything sports related. So any sports games or clips or anything like that, send our way, and I'll be doing a highlight of the week.
This is so smart. Okay, so how did all of this come to? Well, I've almost got 2 questions to this. Why haven't we done this before? And also, how did this all come to be?
Yeah, so I don't know if I can answer the first one. That's something I've been asking myself
we can ask
too.
Our bosses later.
Why hasn't that been a thing? But as for how did it come about, I mean, I follow sports all the time, right? And everybody in the office knows I'm a sports guy. So I just started thinking, why haven't we done this? And so I brought it to you know, the producers and said, hey, like, what if we came up with an idea for sports regularly on our news show?
Yeah.
And, you know, I pitched an idea, kind of cemented it with some producers, and here we are today. So it's really exciting.
Well, and this is, I mean, it's obviously important to our audience, I think. Mm-hmm. But why do you think that this is going to be such a hit?
Well, I mean, you look at Indigenous people in sports, I mean, they go hand in hand, right? Like, I mean, you look at, it just brings a sense of community pride, respect, resiliency. You look at some of the professional Indigenous athletes, they don't go anywhere without their community and their family and that sort of thing, right? So
true.
That's one aspect of it, and we don't have it, and that's a big thing that I thought we needed to have on our show is to show just how important sports and Indigenous people are to sport in the other sense, right? So,
and how active we are. I mean, I think I had said a while ago, I think we could have done an entire series just on you know, the baseball in the summer on the prairies, right? Like that tournament drive, like Saskatchewan especially, but Alberta and to to a lesser extent. You could do a whole reality show on that.
You look at we could do a whole show on just one sport each, right? So it's kind of a big bite to take right now, and it's starting small, but there's just so many things that I want to do, and I want to, you know, share this with the audience and have the audience interact with us as much as possible as well.
It's going to be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
We look forward to it, and that's this Friday.
Starting this Friday, and it'll be bi-weekly Fridays, and just hope everybody can tune in.
Well, we for sure will. I mean, I'll be here watching. Thanks so much to Darryl for joining us. On In Focus today, we met a mom who shared her harrowing story about being victimized in the child welfare system when she was 9, and how decades later that same system came for each of her own 4 children. She's fighting to get them back and to keep the 5th baby that she is pregnant with. Here's a clip from how her firstborn was taken on a birth alert hours after being born.
I breastfed my baby. I laid him back down to bed, and I went to bed myself. So did my spouse beside me. And a few hours into our sleep, I'd say around 8 o'clock in the morning, the nurse came into my room, and she said that there would be that she needed to take my baby to see the pediatrician. And I said to her, "Do you need me to come with you?" And she said, "No, that's okay. I'll be right back with him. You can just lie down and sleep." So I laid back down in the bed, and I wasn't asleep yet. I could see footprints beneath the door frame, and many of them, not just one. So I knew something was happening, and I could just feel that.
Did you know what a birth alert was at this point?
No.
Like nobody, it wasn't a term that you knew. I mean, you know now that there had been a birth alert put on you, and that's why you were treated like you were at the hospital.
Yeah.
Did they take your baby?
Yes. The nurse took my baby.
That was the last time you saw your son at that point? Just a couple hours old?
The nurse at the hospital.
So you guys go home empty-handed. Yeah. How long did you have to wait to get your son back?
I think it was about 6 weeks.
That whole interview is a podcast at aptnnews.ca/podcast. We are all out of time for tonight. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.